A guilty verdict.
I was sitting on my couch waiting for the verdict to come in, and I found myself shaking.
A sense of relief for many, including those in our city tonight, after former police officer Derek Chauvin is convicted in the killing of George Floyd. But some saying the fight for justice is far from over. Plus,
it's clear that workplaces have remained a major driver of transmission.
Peel and Toronto both issuing orders to force workplaces with COVID-19 outbreaks to close. The news met with strong reaction from some manufacturers, what they would like to see being done instead. And snow in April? Yep, it's coming. Get set for a jolt of winter in spring. We'll tell you just how much snowfall to expect and how long it will last.
Guilty! George Floyd! George Floyd!
Jubilation outside the courthouse in Minneapolis tonight after former police officer Derek Chauvin was convicted of murder and manslaughter in the death of George Floyd. Chauvin pinned Floyd to the pavement with his knee on the black man's neck and back for over 9 minutes last May. The arrest captured on video and seen around the world, prompting large protests and cries to re-examine racism in policing. The jury came back today with its verdict after about 10 hours of deliberations over 2 days. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. It was a verdict watched closely by many, including those here in our city, and reactions are continuing to pour in tonight. Let's go now to Chris Glover, who is live for us in Graffiti Alley in front of a mural in honor of George Floyd. And Chris, how are people in the city reacting tonight?
Kelda, I spoke with a Black psychotherapist tonight who deals with trauma often as a part of her job, and she said that as that verdict was being read, she felt herself breathing deeply for all of those people who have had to utter those words, "I can't breathe." And of course, she's referring to George Floyd, and those were some of his last words. You can see them on this mural behind me. Just one of many ways that people in this city have tried to mark this moment. And today there was a sense of relief for many people in our city tonight as a result of all of this, but also a commitment to continue to push for change to make sure that this stops happening.
Find the defendant guilty.
A verdict watched around the globe. Guilty on all counts. What do you think?
I mean, I join in supporting his family in trying to find some solace in this verdict.
Black Lives Matter Canada co-founder Cyrus Marcus Ware is surprised and says the verdict proves one thing.
Uprisings work, that it does matter when the people come together and say, we don't want any more of this violence in our communities. We want an end to police getting away with murder over and over and over again.
Even as Derek Chauvin stood trial for murdering George Floyd in Minneapolis, protests erupted after another white officer killed a black man during a traffic stop in a Minneapolis suburb, highlighting the frequency this happens, underscoring why so many are coming together tonight.
And I think it sends a signal to police services, to police officers, to politicians and members of the public that that type of behavior is completely unacceptable.
This University of Toronto sociology professor says even in egregious cases like Chauvin's, the vast majority of officers are not convicted.
It's symbolic and it's important, but unless we address, the root causes of discrimination within policing, unless we address the systemic factors that put Mr. Floyd in the position that he was in and other people like him, then it's not going to mean a whole lot.
It's obviously triggering for anybody who was closely involved in something similar, because so often the police get away with it.
Mississauga's Chantel Krupka was shot by police last May while she lay wounded from a taser. That officer was charged, but Krupka points to several other police killings in Peel Region where the officer's name wasn't even released.
As long as they are protected like this, it's a license to kill.
I was sitting on my couch waiting for the verdict to come in, and I found myself shaking.
Toronto psychotherapist Roxanne Francis says the pain of the trial can lead to a vicarious trauma and issues like anxiety and depression.
those are all instances of racial trauma, right? Just the fact that there is discrimination and systemic oppression really does speak to that pervasive sense of unease.
Many hoping a symbol of pain can be a symbol of progress, too.
George Floyd should be here. George Floyd should be here today. This should never have happened. And this is why we're calling for widespread change in policing.
Toronto police tonight. How is the city's police force reacting?
The Toronto Police Service sent me a statement tonight, Kelda, saying that it was listening, learning, and changing, and saying that it is committed to being more responsive to communities, including Black Torontonians. And I also got a statement from Peel Police tonight, Kelda, as well, and it was very similar, but it also said that Peel Police is continuing meaningful work to end systemic discrimination and anti-Black racism.
Thanks for that, Chris. That's our Chris Glover reporting live for us tonight. To the pandemic now, and Toronto and Peel taking matters into their own hands, sidestepping the province today by issuing orders to force the closure of any workplace experiencing COVID-19 outbreaks. Our Ali Chiasson reports.
It's clear that workplaces have remained a major driver of transmission in our region pretty much throughout the pandemic.
Peel's top doctor has invoked his Section 22 powers to force a facility to close for a minimum of 10 days if they have an outbreak of 5 or more COVID cases.
In order to get into workplaces quickly, stop spread, save lives, that's why we've taken this measure today.
Dr. Lawrence Lowe says workers in the industrial hub that is Peel Region are bearing the brunt.
What we've seen is this constant chain between occupational exposures and then on into households, where we have lots of large households with many family members, or oftentimes many vulnerable low-wage workers who are actually working, who are living together and working together as well. So that's our inherent challenge in Peel.
Toronto Public Health has since followed suit with a similar order, but the wording is a little different. It says the order is planned to require the closure of certain workplaces or portions of workplaces with 5 or more cases identified. More details on Toronto's plans are expected on Friday.
The announcement today was very troubling.
The president and CEO of Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters is a big critic of this approach. He'd prefer
rapid testing, vaccinations as fast and as hard. Let's get on with it, and making sure that people are following the best practices. I think that's how we're going to get out of this, not by arbitrarily shutting down workplaces.
If X amount of cases gets...
It's not arbitrary to Amazon worker Justin Brewer.
To be honest, most people want it to happen.
The Brampton Fulfillment Center was already forced to shut down in March when the workplace had reached 600 cases since October. They made changes since then.
They have everybody separated now by floor and by department, so you're not supposed to cross over anything. And doing it this way, it is a lot safer.
But this time, if Peel Public Health decides to shut the facility down under the Section 22 order, Brewer says
they should pay us, and I'm hoping that they do pay us.
While Amazon says it provides sick pay and benefits for full and part-time employees, largely it's temporary workers who would need to turn to sickness benefits offered by the federal government. After refusing to bring paid sick days for months, today a hint from the province that they may be ready to help sick workers as well.
We are considering our alternatives now to deal with those gaps.
The province would have definitely felt some pressure to create its own paid sick leave benefit because these workplace closures could be enacted as soon as Friday. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Long lineups have become the norm at pop-up vaccination clinics across the city. The clinics have been operating in a few designated hotspot neighborhoods for a couple of weeks now, with some people camping out and skipping work or school just to get a shot. As our Angelina King reports, those running the clinics say they're doing the best they can with limited resources.
At vaccine pop-up clinics in Toronto, lineups are now the norm, but seemingly not a deterrent.
I made sure that I had to be here as early as possible. It was very important for me to get vaccinated, just so that I can make a positive difference.
This group of roommates making the most of it. They say the several-hour wait is worth it.
I think we've all waited longer at Wonderland for a ride than we've waited right now, so a ride at Wonderland is definitely less important than the vaccine.
We have to come together as a community. Like, we know this area already is underdeveloped.
Those running pop-ups are bringing vaccines to residents who can't wait in line, but for many, lining up is the only option. Community health workers say for some, it may be the best option, especially for those who experience barriers to booking appointments or transportation.
Bringing the vaccines to their door, into their neighborhoods, in spaces that they feel safe and comfortable in is really, really welcome.
To make things more efficient, she'd like to see the hardest hit areas receive more vaccines and a consistent supply.
I think it does, make it challenging to plan long term. And with that, I think it makes it really challenging to communicate and engage with community to reassure them.
They are superheroes to pull this together.
Dr. Andrew Bazari worked alongside Black Creek Community Health Center at a pop-up over the weekend. He says those running the clinics should be applauded, but they need more resources and support.
To ensure that the hours are available, there's different ways and venues, the mobile efforts to get out to people's doors and into buildings, appointments are made available, primary care and pharmacies have access to the vaccine.
Across the city, another round of people spent the night waiting outside the Parkway Forest Community Center for an appointment card. Ryan Murata didn't sleep over but arrived bright and early after lining up for hours yesterday with no luck.
Didn't make the cut, I guess, but they said they had more today than they had yesterday, so it's hopeful.
North York General Hospital says over the 4-day pop-up, more than 3,200 people got their shot, and today no one was turned away. Dr. Bazari says seeing those hardest hit wait in line is just another testament to their resilience.
The commitment to show up and wait, rain or shine, to get the vaccine, to provide for their loved ones, and to protect the people they care about and themselves. How do you get more powerful than that?
In an effort to ease some of the pressure, the Ontario government says it's working with Shoppers Drug Mart to make it easier for people 40 and older to get their vaccine. The pharmacy will be offering 24/7 appointments at 20 locations across Ontario, the majority of them in hotspots, and some pharmacies will be offering walk-in vaccines as well. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
Our meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, an overcast day with some snow on the way.
Yeah, Kelda, that's right. It's actually, continuing to push its way in here, and we'll see some significant accumulations around the Niagara region, but a little bit elsewhere too. That's why there's a winter weather travel advisory in place from eastern portions of the GTA stretching back towards southwestern Ontario. The system is mainly to the south of us, and because of that, the snow kind of hugs along the northern shores of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Wet snow as well, so melting very quickly in what we're seeing on the roadways, but it'll build up a little bit on our grassier surfaces. You see how it kind of holds on into tomorrow morning as well. Still getting a bit there close to the lakeshore, but even a little dusting up towards Markham and Newmarket and through that region. Then as we get into the afternoon hours, a few breaks developing tomorrow, but just allow extra time for that morning commute. The amounts of anywhere from 2 to 3 centimeters around the GTA, enhanced amounts you see there for the Niagara region. -1 tonight, allowing for that wet snow. And the high tomorrow, the best we're likely to do, Kelda, is 4 degrees. But this is going to melt and we're going to warm back up. I'll talk about that coming up.
All right. Thanks so much, Colette. And this just in, we're learning Premier Doug Ford is self-isolating after coming in close contact with a staffer who tested positive for COVID-19. A statement from his office reads, immediately upon learning that this staff member was even at risk of exposure, the Premier left the legislature to be tested. While his test results have returned negative, the Premier will follow all public health advice for close contacts of positive cases, including self-isolating. Members of the Premier's office staff who were close contacts of the individual who tested positive will also isolate. The Premier will continue leading this government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic while in isolation, including briefings with officials and communicating with the public. Hospitals across Ontario are caring for a record number of COVID-19 patients tonight, both in intensive care and in general hospital wards. And all this has the hardest hit facilities in the GTA transferring out more patients than ever before. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
Hospitals in the Greater Toronto Area are now so full that they're transferring dozens of patients every day as far away as Kingston and London. The hospital system that's the most affected right now, William Osler. Its sites in Brampton and Etobicoke have had to transfer more patients than any hospital in the province.
I am very concerned about the potential for us to not be able to meet the demand of the pace at which patients will present through the front doors of our hospital.
With the transport and hospital systems working flat out now, there's fear about the prospect of a further spike of COVID patients needing critical care.
That's the situation that I'm most worried about, and I think is almost an inevitability.
The transfers are not a simple matter. The bulk of them are happening by road.
Essentially, it's taking that ICU that they're coming from and recreating it in the back of a land ambulance for that sometimes 2 to 3 hour trip.
Transfers were happening steadily in March, but the pace has accelerated dramatically this month.
We're pretty much maxed out right now. At this point, I don't believe we can provide more resources given our current circumstances.
The health minister says the transfers maximize use of the hospital system.
To make sure that if someone needs to be admitted to intensive care, whether by reason of COVID or some other reason, that we will have the space for them.
We are dangerously close to not being able to provide typical care in typical spaces to the patients who present with COVID-19 infection and others.
The number of COVID patients in Ontario's hospitals has more than tripled in the past month. It's now at a record high. The number in ICUs has doubled in just 3 weeks, also the highest since the pandemic began. The result? Hospitals receiving transfers from the GTA are filling up too, so they're having to send their own patients on to such places as Ottawa and Windsor. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And I think that there are going to be a few players who are going to kind of slip through the cracks and lose that opportunity.
Still ahead, the Ontario Hockey League cancels its season. We'll look at the impact it's having on and off the ice. Coming up after the break. Welcome back. The Ontario Hockey League season is now officially canceled. Another big blow after losing all of last season's playoffs and championships. Our Greg Ross has more on the impact this will have on the game and its players.
There's just kind of no words to describe the feelings that I have about missing a full season of hockey.
Owen Sound attack defenseman Andrew Parrott says this was supposed to be a make-or-break season for him. After going undrafted in his first season of eligibility, he says he was starting to turn a corner in 2020, just before the pandemic.
Last year, I kind of gained pretty good traction for myself with scouts and recognition.
This season, he was hoping to pick up where he left off, which made today's announcement by the OHL commissioner all the more difficult to hear.
We just couldn't safely return to play this season. We have made the decision to move our focus to planning for next season, the 2021-22 season.
David Branch said the league was gearing up for a return to play up until very recently. He says the province even granted them permission to play out of 4 hub cities and offered financial assistance for testing and other health and safety regulations. But it just wasn't feasible.
We just couldn't afford to do what the standards were.
The OHL is one of the most important developmental leagues in the world, churning out dozens of professional players every year. There's no telling what kind of ripple effect this could have.
You miss that structure, right? That the way you play, the day-to-day stuff, the learning how to be a pro, the riding the buses, the camaraderie with the teammates, all those things that go into making a pro.
Steve Clark is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Niagara Ice Dogs. He says missing out on this kind of development could cost some a career.
I just think there's only so many things that scouts and teams can do in terms of evaluating players. And I think that there are going to be a few players who are going to kind of slip through the cracks and lose that opportunity.
Parrott says he's going to do everything he can to ensure he's not one of them. He has one more year of OHL eligibility, and he says he plans to make the most of it.
It's not over for me yet, and I just have to keep kind of grinding it out and just keep working towards it because I have another opportunity next year to keep my momentum going.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
A live look at our city tonight, bracing for a few centimeters of April snow. Colette's back after the break with all the details. Stay with us.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
And it's a pretty chilly one out there tonight. Wet snow has begun coming down in some areas, changing over to light snow overnight. Currently, it is 2 degrees in downtown Toronto. Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your extended forecast. And Colette, feeling much cooler out there today as we brace for that snow that will make for a wet commute tomorrow morning.
Yeah, Kelda, winter weather travel advisory is in place. And for that morning commute, even though we won't be seeing a lot building up on the roadways, I do want our essential workers to allow a little extra time so you'll be safe getting where you need to go, as we will see things moving a little slower on the road. So it continues to fill in tonight, so becoming a little more enhanced as we go a little further deeper into the overnight hours. Still some wet snow into tomorrow morning, and then by tomorrow afternoon, we'll see actually some clearing even in the cloud cover, some breaks beginning to develop. Daytime highs today, big departure from yesterday. Toronto yesterday we were up to 17 degrees, so 6 degrees, not feeling quite the same, and not feeling the same tonight as we fall off to below freezing, and a chilly day for Wednesday. But just watching as that snow carries on. Because the main system is stateside, we are just seeing it kind of giving this glancing blow across the northern shores of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Some enhanced amounts here around the Niagara region where it'll be extended in terms of the period that you're dealing with it. This is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Still seeing this through the GTA into eastern Ontario and carrying on still. St. Catharines, Niagara, even Hamilton, you'll see a little bit extra there too as it builds up, especially as you get towards the grassy surfaces and off the roadways, although those will be wet. There we are into Wednesday. We get some of that partial clearing, not a whole lot, because Thursday, guess what? Still mostly cloudy skies. Don't worry, high pressure is building in for Friday, and we're going to see sunshine and warmer readings. So anywhere from 2 to say 3, maybe even 4 centimeters. And then as you get towards southern parts, getting away from Hamilton towards St. Catharines here of the Golden Horseshoe, there 7, could be even up to 10 centimeters there in some cases. In Hamilton, some parts could be up to 5. Tonight, lows right around freezing or just below for you around southwestern Ontario. Similar temperatures around the Golden Horseshoe for the high tomorrow, 7 Thursday. Look at that, Kelda. Snow's all gone, sun's back, and mid-teens Friday.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colette. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.